Welcome to the Warships Podcast with your host, Kellorn, Venacera, and Erun.
Hello and welcome to episode 92 of the Warships Podcast. Last week we talked about the recent expansion of the Community Contributor Program, and today we have one of those brand new community contributors on as a guest. Welcome to the show, Captain Rye.
It's good to be here. I thank you for welcoming, and I thank you for having me on today.
Well, I know that you're Venacera's friend, and she was the one that definitely got us set to have you on the show, so we appreciate that. And actually, we're going to have Vanessa take away the interview on this one.
Absolutely, Kellorn. Captain Rye, it's a pleasure to have you on board the show here. And I know we were kind of chatting about this the other day, but my gosh, 2 years ago or so during the Let's Battle Tour Seattle? And now here we are. You're in the CC program, and as well as we are. And it's been quite the journey. How do you feel?
Oh, well, it is. It's actually kind of exciting, of course, to get into the Community Contributor Program. It's something that I've been kind of trying to get, contact information with for the better part of a year now. So when that open application showed up, I was pretty excited to, be able to put that in and then play the waiting game. But just seeing the community that's already here and just kind of the camaraderie that goes on in that Discord there, with all the stuff that gets said, it's nice. It's good to be here, and hopefully I can bring my own brand to the community and provide my own input.
Absolutely. What got you into World of Warships?
Surprisingly enough, I have been interested in warships for a very, very long time. I think there's a really, really old warship game. You probably heard of it. It's like something Steel Fleet, Navy Field. That's it. Long time ago. Used to play that a lot and, really liked it. But obviously wargaming with their World of Warships was, so much more than that game ever could be. And so Wargaming announced World of Warships way, way back in 2012, and I registered on the official forums to get news and updates. And so I've actually been a member of the World of Warships forum community since 2012. And then, they had their beta weekend test thing where they were doing kind of a, server load test. And so they just needed a bunch of players. And I was fortunate enough to get an access code for that beta weekend. And once I played it, it was, I had to have more of it. I couldn't get enough of it.
Oh, I remember those times. So you got into World of Warships. You're excited like all of us were. But what got you into doing the YouTube thing and trying to make content?
Actually, it was a friend of mine who suggested that. He said, you've got a really great voice for this kind of content. You're very enthusiastic and energetic about the content that you do create. And so he suggested, okay, well, I'll get you a cheap little snow globe mic and I'll kind of guide you through the initial steps of doing something similar. It was just a basic podcast where I talk, never released any of the stuff, but it got the confidence level up for me to, push forward with making content. And I think World of Warships was my very first content on YouTube. It was a video on the Fubuki, surprisingly enough. So this guy really did help me get that confidence up, get the equipment necessary and the programs necessary and learn how to use them with the voice editing. And then they just kind of went from there and learned most of the stuff that I needed to learn.
That's pretty cool. I've watched a lot of your videos off and on throughout the years now. And I know not only do you do World of Warships, but you do another game that I really like, Star Trek Online. So it's really cool to see all the different content that you do and produce. Also, aside from being a fellow devotee of the Fletcher class, always good to see all the videos there. Now, I have to ask because this is something that I know we've all gone through, and now you're experiencing it. Testing, and what is World of Warships like for you now that you're an official community contributor and have all this testing that you get to do compared to what it was like before when you weren't testing?
I honestly don't really think it's impacted much of my experience in the game. Realistically, it just means I now have a couple of new ships that I can go try out and provide feedback on. But overall, it's I'm going to take whatever ship I'm going to take out into the game and play it and play to win and see how the ship performs. So for me, it really hasn't changed much. Because I'm just going to go play the game anyway. And again, I'm going to play the ship and, figure out what the ship is capable of and then figure out a play style to match that ship.
Right. Do you consider yourself a specialist in any kind of ships, or are you more of a generalist, or is there anything you don't play?
I vehemently refuse to play aircraft carriers. I hate carriers. They are cancer. I respect good carrier players. I just don't want you in my game. But carriers, I generally don't play. I have very few battles in those. I have pretty good, battle numbers with my battleships. I really like the Missouri. Recently started playing the Yamato again and kind of getting familiar with that ship, what it can and can't do. But I would say the biggest thing that I'm known for is my destroyer gameplay. Z-52, Yu Yang, and of course, as Vanessa mentioned, the Fletcher. I think I've got something like 40 Fletcher videos on my channel. I have a specific playlist just for all of them.
So with Gearing getting the Fletcher torps, are you going to be more interested in playing Gearing now?
No, I don't like the way the Gearing looks. It's a thick boat, and I don't like thick boats. It's a little too high in the water for my taste as well. But, that's just a aesthetic opinion.
Yeah, a little, they just don't go for the ugly girl is what you're saying. So
yeah, pretty much. I mean, Z-52, nice and sleek, sits low profile, has advantages of the hydroacoustic and, fast reloading torps. The Yu Yang I like because it sits low into the water too. I mean, it's basically a Gearing. It's just a little bit of a different shape, and it's got realistically, it's got the 13.5 kilometer torpedoes, and I really like those.
What do you love the most about the game itself?
Realistically, I like the all the different ship options to choose from. I mean, you're never wanting for a different ship. Like, I'm having a really bad day in the Fletcher. All right, well then I'll pick a different ship. Maybe I'll go take the Shimakaze out. I don't play that too often. Why not? Then maybe destroyer's just not working for you. All right, I'll switch over to battleships. Get those big damage numbers and one-shot cruisers that are causing me all sorts of headaches.
But what if carriers are causing you a headache? Then what?
Then, depending on my ship, I either pop a smoke screen in my speed boost and run away and, frantically spam the help button, or I just pop defensive AA. Or better yet, if I'm in a battleship that doesn't seem like it's got good anti-aircraft, I just let the carrier, feed me planes, carrier, just feed me planes.
But why not, do what a normal player does, which is go complain on the forums? That seems like a much better strategy.
Oh, sure, yeah, forum complaining. No, that's not going to do anybody any good. I learned that lesson a long time ago.
Yeah, the forums can be, quite the place of salt, to say the least. But thank you, Captain Rye, for kind of filling us in on how you've come along, and now you're a CC. And Kaloran, we'll get it back to you to start our show.
Oh, well, we're definitely glad to have you today, Rye. And I guess before we get started, I have a few announcements to get out of the way. First, winners of the giveaway on Promo Simple for the June CC crates and camos will be notified within the next 24 hours, so keep an eye on your email. I do apologize. I meant to get those out to you on Monday or Tuesday of this week, but I ended up getting sick, and with that and the holiday, it got really insane this week so far. Second, Patreon backers were messaged this morning about the Patreon giveaway for June. Respond through that message to get in on that drawing. And then finally, one of our listeners, Griefer, has offered up an HMCS hideout as a prize for the person that emails us at warshipspodcast@gmail.com with the highest damage Tier 6 Plus Destroyer game from between 12:01 a.m. Thursday, July 5th, to 11:59 p.m. Sunday, July 8th, Pacific time. Due to Griefer's preferences, this is for NA only, I'm afraid. But get out there and get some T6DD games in with some high damage. Email them to us, but make sure that they're random battles only. So a cool little contest for you guys to participate in this weekend. With all of that out of the way, we have 3 brand new ships to talk about today. First up are the new IJN Destroyer sisters Kitakaze and Harugumo, which round out Tier 9 and Tier 10 in the Akizuki gunboat line. Kitakaze is a virtual twin of Akizuki, but with a 6 torp launcher, whereas Harugumo keeps the 6 torp launcher, but gets another twin 100mm turret for a total of 10 guns. I'm hardly the world's expert on destroyer gameplay, but I actually had some fun testing these ships, even though they require pretty heavy captain skill investment. But I guess, guys, what were your first impressions of these, and where do they fit in or not fit in at the high tier meta?
Honestly, I kind of feel like they're a bit garbage. I hate to be harsh, but it just, more or less putting the investment into a captain into those ships, and even then they still didn't feel that good, especially at the meta and the high tier gameplay that's going on right now. I don't really care for them, and I didn't have really good games, and they honestly don't really feel like destroyers either. They're definitely like light cruisers without the Citadel, but you definitely get nuked. So my experience has not been good with them so far.
I would say that, opposite yours, my experience with them has actually been decent. Like, I've had really good games with them, and the destroyers have done what I want them to do, which is go out there, spot the enemy destroyers, put torpedoes out in the sea there, and start setting fires where possible. I just haven't been able to win a battle in them.
I think the Kitakaze is slightly too slow. Other than that, I like them. Harugumo, I guess the only downside that I felt about the ship was that it felt slow because the ship is enormous, like really long. So it seems like the ship isn't actually that fast, but it's faster than the Akizuki, so I don't know. I like them.
I'm also on the like them bandwagon as well, and I actually found them to be quite powerful, and I won most of the games that I played in them. Particularly the Harugumo, I was able to just really rack up the gun damage numbers. Something like 100,000 damage worth of gun, just of pure gun damage. And, that doesn't sound like a lot until you realize just how many shots that you have to take to get that much damage in a ship like that. In terms of the torpedoes, I guess one of the problems that I had is that the 6 torpedo launcher, it's cool to have one that has that many torpedoes in it, but the spread that you get, even on narrow spread, really widens out those torpedoes by a pretty extreme margin when you start getting towards like 5, 6, 7, 8 kilometers.
Also, it's an even number of torpedoes, which means that no torpedo goes to the middle, which leads to interesting situations.
Yep.
No, I agree with that as well. But I think you can compensate for that if you as long as you kind of use torpedoes to a certain degree. Again, it's neither one of these ships I think can be said anything about being newbie friendly. They require a heavy skill investment in your captain skills. They require a heavy investment in knowing when to shoot and when not to shoot. I actually found that there was a whole bunch of times, particularly playing Harugumo, that to get into the position that I wanted to do my shooting, I had to not shoot at targets that I could have hurt quite badly because they would have hurt me badly back in return. But if I waited and 2-3 minutes later, then I could really farm those people without taking any damage at all in return.
Yeah, I was playing them very similarly to, kind of the way that we've been testing the USN light cruisers. But I don't know. I couldn't get the same results that you guys have been getting, and I don't know, maybe I'll put some more games in them. But yeah, between a lot of the radar that is prevalent now, and the detection ranges on them are quite significant. So you can't really play them as a traditional destroyer, more or less, compared to other IGN or even USN destroyers. So it's definitely a wait and see kind of boat, and then take advantage when you can.
I mean, they don't have the best concealment, but Kitakaza is like 5.95 and Haraguma is like 6.2, something like that. I don't know. I feel like you can play it more or less like a standard destroyer. Also, if you're having trouble with radar, just equip the range upgrade and get AFT. I mean, 17-kilometer range on a destroyer. Why not?
I feel like these two destroyers, realistically, they kind of play like the lower tier US destroyers, where you have to be smarter about where you're putting your boat. You got to use those islands to get yourself up close to your targets or into position to shoot them. And it's definitely not a boat that you're going to take in and sit in the back and stealth torp. It's not that kind of boat. There's no way you can play that way and have, in my opinion, have a good time and be effective in battle.
Okay, just to clarify what I mentioned about the range upgrade, please don't do that. Please do not do that.
Oh, I actually, it is funny though, Arun. I do take AFT on those ships, but I don't take it to shoot at those ranges. I take it because I want the gun range for the anti-air. Yeah. So, but what's actually interesting is that those 100mm guns, even though that ship does not get defensive fire, and that's actually one of the things that a large portion of the community is really quite upset about, is that these ships, which were literally described as anti-aircraft destroyers by the Japanese Navy, don't get access to the defensive fire consumable. But even without that, the amount of DPS that they put out is actually pretty astonishing, in terms of just how much damage that they will do to aircraft. I had aircraft that were coming near me, and I would sit in my smoke with and just start shooting down planes even without it. So they're actually quite powerful little anti-aircraft batteries as well.
Oh yeah, another cool thing is that the torpedo launcher reloads slower than the torpedo reload consumable.
Yeah, I mean, I found I end up with what is it, like you get 3 or 4 depending on if you have it's between 2 and 4 depending on how many you have, right, with superintendent and
Yes.
premium. I think I ended up with 3 just because I wasn't running superintendent, but I was running the premium consumable. I mean, I found the torps to be actually pretty comfortable to use. I was able to do pretty decent damage to them. They're actually surprisingly effective against cruisers that were trying to charge me and things like that. Now, I did have one that I got rammed by a Tashkent, and I really don't know why he decided to ram me, because he could have torpedoed me and killed me, but that's a whole nother story.
I almost wonder if there might be an option to test with maybe deep water torpedoes on these boats. Maybe Akatsuki up, given at least an option for it, and maybe something similar to Asashio. I don't know, just something that would give it some teeth against some of the really large ships. But then, the guns are, they're going to be just crazy against destroyers anyways. So I wonder if Wargaming has thought about that option.
I don't know about the Deepwater Torps so much, Vanessa, but the thing that I found is that these ships are really, really effective against the superstructures of enemy battleships and enemy cruisers. You pull out your AP and you just start peppering the superstructure again and again and again and again. And a lot of times, if it's got 32mm bow and 32mm stern, you can actually do a fair amount of damage to the bow and the stern when you start to saturate the superstructure areas of those ships. This is one of those ships that it really like I was saying before, it's a high skill required ship. Not only do you have to have skills like physically in the game, but you have to have meta skills of knowing where to shoot a ship. I found that you didn't want to shoot, even though I did take, the inertial fuse for HE shells, which you absolutely need to take for the ships. I wasn't shooting HE at battleships. I was shooting AP at them and just really racking up the damage that way. Captain Ryan, I guess a question for you, since you're kind of the Fletcher specialist. How would you fight one of these ships with a Fletcher?
Well, I mean, realistically looking at it, I would probably get up to it. Obviously, I'm going to spot him first, just the concealment difference. I would, try and keep him spotted as best as possible so that my cruisers and my battleships, anybody who's back behind me and supporting me, can start focusing him down. Probably, and generally speaking, I just do this in all of my destroyers. I don't like to engage in one-on-one destroyer fights because it's not really worth it to me to trade half or more of my health to fight you and take you out of the game, if that then means that I'm not going to be able to do that at the end of the game. But in this particular case with these destroyers, opening up with guns at ranges less than 7 kilometers with the Fletcher, and probably realistically, I would just try to get torpedoes out towards you and hope you're foolish enough to continue sailing in a straight line for me. Otherwise, standard tactics for me would be I'm going to drop a smoke screen and I'm going to turn away and brake and run. And again, I want my cruisers, I want my battleships, I want the guy in the Kurfürst with the 12-kilometer secondaries. I want them to shoot at these boats until they're low enough health where I can get in and kill you without trading more than 50% of my health.
So I guess the better way that the question I really wanted to ask is, are you afraid of a ship like this in your Fletcher or in your gearing type of thing?
I want to say no. I'm not afraid of it. I respect it. I don't want to engage it directly, but if I have to engage it, I know what I'm getting into here. I'm basically trading all of my health for all of his health, but if I can take him out of the game, that's one fewer destroyers my team has to worry about dealing with later.
Fair enough. So the other kind of last question is, I don't know how much competitive scene that you play at Rye, but is something like this viable in a competitive scene? Because it was my impression that these ships were going to be quite good as random battle farming, and that they may have a place on kind of a niche type of competitive scene. But in general, we would not see them in things like clan battles or King of the Seas.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't do much in the way of the competitive. I mean, my clan barely has enough active players to even field for clan battle, so haven't done any of that. Looking at, how the ship plays, I think it's possible that somebody might take it into clan battles and it might do very well there. It needs a support network of ships around it in order for you to do really well in it. So I'm sure you could, coordinate with other destroyers. It's kind of like taking the Yu Yang with radar. You can do it in a competitive field, but you definitely have to have other ships to provide you the support that you're not getting, which is, things like the smoke screen or other spotting.
I actually think that we might see it in the next round of, King of the Seas and things like that, where there are carriers, because you really can't discount its AA firepower, that it doesn't really give up very much to be able to use it. So, we'll see. But for now, I think it's going to be more in the random battle type of ship. But it is, I think the bottom line is that I had fun playing these ships. Vanessa, Arun, did you guys have fun playing this, or did you find them to be like not fun to play?
Absolutely had fun playing them.
Have not had fun playing them.
Can you guys elaborate a little bit more on why you had fun or didn't have fun?
Well, because the ship is fun, duh.
Arun, you kill me, man. You absolutely kill me. What about you, Vanessa? You talked a little bit about the struggles that you had with the ship. Were they what made it not fun, or were there other aspects of the ship that were not fun for you?
I think it's just really the high tier meta, especially with just the abundance of radar that's out there right now. And some of the maps that I was playing on, it felt a real struggle to try and get into a good position where I could try and farm some damage. And when you're outspotted by a Z52 with Harugumo, it can be a little, offsetting. So you have to play pretty cautiously and, kind of prepare to be really defensive in nature. And when I play destroyers, I am very offensive. I'm very trying to exploit, the enemy weaknesses, exploit the flank, scout, do all of these things. And it's very different with this type of ship. And I feel it plays more like a light cruiser than necessarily a destroyer. So I don't know. My experience and my thought process with it is a lot different than most of the destroyers I play.
Well, I have to somewhat agree there, but where I guess I disagree is that what I found really fun is that if there's another destroyer in the game, I can go, okay, if we end up fighting, I will win.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to kind of beat that horse to death a little bit, but we do have another ship to talk about, and that's the Nueva de Julio, the Brooklyn-class cruiser sold to the Armada Argentine post-World War II. Of note to history fans, 2 of these cruisers were sold to Argentina. The other was known as General Belgrano during the Falklands conflict with the United Kingdom and is, to this day, the only warship to be sunk by a nuclear submarine. Her less unfortunate sister ship, Nueva de Julio, is what we have in World of Warships, and we tested her originally as Boise with a radar consumable at Tier 7. But in this iteration of testing, Wargaming has changed that over to a heel, which is unique for a Tier 7 non-British cruiser. And I found her gameplay to be, a little different than Helena, which is a ship that I actually really, really love. But I guess the question for you guys is a heel too much of a power creep at Tier 7?
Well, I mean, we see it with, and I'm drawing a blank, the Italian cruiser, the Tier 7. I'm completely drawing a blank on that one. We see a number of cruisers. Abruzzi, yes, thank you. We've seen multiple cruisers now coming out, especially light cruisers, that they've been adding a heel ability to. So I don't know if it's necessarily power creep or just kind of addressing the elephant in the room, if you will, that a lot of us have been complaining about, that maybe cruisers, from a couple lower tiers need to start having heal abilities. I don't know if, I obviously, yes, that would constitute as power creep, but when all of your other categories have kind of crept up a little in power, it just kind of seems to me to maybe balance it out a little bit, that you might want to address that or have a healing capability, because especially the light cruisers can just be deleted like instantly. And within, a blink of an eye, literally you can just be sunk. So I don't know if that's necessarily like power creep in a bad way or power creep in just addressing.
How about you, Captain Rye?
I feel like the that heal there on that particular cruiser is actually something that is needed. It's needed for balance, because that cruiser, the gun range is on it. It's very typical, the U.S. light cruiser gun range, unless you have the captain's skills and modules installed to increase it. You have to get up closer. You don't have much of a window between your concealment and your gun range. So you're going to get spotted, and the people with the big guns, they're going to start shooting at you. And, the over penetrations on a ship like this, they still hurt a lot. So having a heal that you can start recovering some of the overpin health on is, in my opinion, it's really important and, good for balance. Otherwise, people are going to get this cruiser and they're going to go in there. They're going to get themselves into a position, and then somebody is in a battleship at 20 kilometers they're just going to dump shells right through their bow and leave them on 2,000 health for the next 5 minutes until some destroyer decides to roll up and around and finish you off with some high explosive. So,
well, I mean, the counter argument to that, Rye, is that right now you can go out and you can buy Atlanta, and Atlanta is a tier 7 cruiser. She's a light cruiser, and she doesn't have a heel. I mean, she's got other aspects of her that make her a really good ship, but you can hurt an Atlanta really, really well, and there's nothing that she can do about it. What makes giving a heel to Nueva de Julio different than giving one to Atlanta?
Well, I think Atlanta is a much smaller ship too. I mean, it's also quicker and more maneuverable. This ship just doesn't have that maneuverability. It's a very long ship. So, in that respect, you're basically compensating for being a much larger target. Additionally, Atlanta gets radar at tier 7 as well. So, when you're out and around behind those islands, you take a big chunk of health taken off, and you're just hiding back behind an island, and there's a destroyer near around you. You can pop your radar and you can see what he's doing, and give him a nice fat broadside of those 5-inch guns when he rolls around the island to try and finish you off.
I was going to joke that Atlanta and Flint are really just large destroyers with citadels, and that's your difference.
I guess for me, I actually found that this heel on Nueva de Julio gave me an advantage that was bigger than I expected when I first read that they were going to give this ship a heel. I found that this made the Julio to be a very zombie-like ship, that I would get hit, I would go dark, I would heal up, I would come back, I would find an island, and I would farm people, and there wasn't a whole lot that they could do about it. And honestly, after a couple of times of that, I should have been dead, but I wasn't, and I was still able to affect the game. I still got 3 more kills, and it was a decisive factor in us winning the game, and it was solely because of that heal. And for me, that really started me down this idea of, hey, is this a good idea? In the hands of somebody that is going to, play this to the absolute maximum and use all of these heals and get the maximum amount of hit points possible. Now I've got a ship that literally, it can tank twice as much damage as an equivalent ship can. Yes, Captain Wright, you're absolutely correct. It is slow, it is not very maneuverable, and it is long as as you can imagine, because it's got 5 turrets on it. But the other side of that coin is it's got 5 turrets. It's got 15 guns that are spewing IFHE 6-inch shells. It can just do a massive amount of damage in just a few more minutes of being alive that is offered by that heal. So, back when it had the radar when it was Boise, I was like, okay, this gives me a compelling alternative to playing Helena. I sacrifice a little bit of DPM, but I get the radar so that I can go against I can find those destroyers that you were talking about and kill them. But when they switched this over and gave it the heal and took away the radar, now I feel like I can abuse this in a way that I wasn't able to abuse it before. This is also a trade-off from Helena. Helena's is a really fun ship to play, but you have to be very, very careful about it. You can't make mistakes. This ship, much more forgiving. Yes, you lose a little bit of DPM, but I would lose that DPM any day to get the amount of survivability that this ship has.
Yeah, I look at it like the difference between, Hipper and Prinz Eugen. This ship it's a lot of fun, but the amount of work and effort that you've got to think about how you can get De Julio close enough to do damage without necessarily getting deleted, because you have a very small firing range comparative to all the other tier 7 cruisers out there. So when you get into tier 9 matches, there's some maps that it's a real struggle to figure out, okay, where can I go to actually be effective on this?
But if you're willing to trade out the DPM for survivability, there's this other class of ships that excels at it even more.
What do you mean, Aaron?
Well, I heard this myth about this ship called a battle boat, I believe.
Bottle sheep.
I thought you mean BB babies.
Close enough, I think.
Well, I mean, I guess my point was just that, we had Kutuzov as an example from not too long ago. Kutuzov was removed from the game because it was felt to be too powerful with the ability to smoke and to fire, and its 6-inch guns with IFHE. It could do a lot of damage to ships, just in pure fire damage, as well as the actual HE explosive damage. And I feel like that's the same case here. When you take IFHE and you're constantly landing 10, 12 hits at a time, yeah, some of your shells are going to break, but you're still doing a lot of damage to battleships. And, with the arcs on the ship, it's easy to sit behind islands. And then if you make a mistake, boom, you hit your heel, you back off a little bit, and you come back. I don't know, maybe I'm taking this to a little too far, but I think that people are underestimating just how good this ship is going to be.
I don't disagree. I think it could very well be the way you described, because IFHE and those guns will mean that it will be able to fight even tier 9 ships and still deal damage. And, it can go down to fighting, tier 5s? That sounds
correct,
actually,
tier 5s.
That sounds actually quite dangerous.
So I guess, Captain Rye, after hearing us talk about this a little bit, did we change your opinion about this ship at all?
Well, you certainly gave me some additional things to think about with that ship. I never played the Boise, so I don't know what the ship was like with the radar versus the heel. I do know that I tend to use the heel quite a bit, but then again, I'm a bit more of an aggressive player when it comes to. I don't like sitting behind an island and camping bush, if you will, to get my damage done. So for me, playing more aggressively the heel, I think, is a really good balance for this ship, given its maneuverability issues. But to go and play it more traditionally like the Helena, then yeah, I could definitely see that it could be an overpowered aspect. And definitely impact the end of the game. You're the sole surviving cruiser. You've got no health left. Any enemy is going to come around and kill you. Versus this ship, where if you're the sole surviving cruiser versus, say, a destroyer or another cruiser or something, and oh yeah, surprise! let me heal back a quarter of my health here, and suddenly I've got more health than you, and plus the 15 guns to shoot at you with. Then it becomes a definitely more of a factor where it's, now I've got the damage output plus the health again to win the game.
I guess one of the factors that I found interesting is that I'm not sure if I think it's 50%, maybe it's 66% of it. The Citadel damage can actually be repaired by this heel. It's very close to what the heel is on the British cruisers. And so in ways that some of the other, like in Atago, the heel is very, very good, but it only repairs, I think, like 33%. It's a 33% of Citadel damage. It's a very standard amount. So it, like, if you get Citadel in Atago, you're going to take a lot of damage, and even though you have a heel, you're not going to get all that much back. Whereas in this ship, I took a lot of damage and then I healed a lot of it back, much more than I was expecting.
So then would you say that, maybe this heel would be a little bit better if they made it more like the Atago's heel as opposed to, the British light cruiser heel or the Conqueror heel?
Well, I guess it's only 33% according to the thing, but it did feel like more than that. But yeah, I do think that it needs to be toned down a little bit. Maybe it's just the pure heel amount that it was allowed to do. I don't know. It something about the heel just made it feel like it was a little too much for the light cruiser hull that it was in.
Yeah, I feel like when I played the ship, when I got Citadel'd, especially from the bow, I tended to lose a lot of health, and looking at the heel, how much I could recover was barely a sliver in most cases. So that's my experience, and that's of course why I say I think it's with this ship is at least reasonably balanced, kind of a gimmick for it.
And on the other hand, it may have been that I was just taking heavy penetrating hits without getting Citadel'd, because that makes a difference as well, because it's the same noise that you hear when you're receiving the hit. And so I thought I was getting Citadel'd, but maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was just taking heavy penetrating damage, and I was able to repair like 50% of that back.
Probably. I mean, I know when I took a lot of penetrating damage or a lot of like high explosive damage into my bow or my stern, if somebody was, another cruiser was shooting HE at me, then yeah, I could definitely recover a lot of that health. But, in order to really take full advantage of recovering all that health, I first had to get this boat turned around and then opened up the distance with the very slow top speed so that I could drop off detectability.
Yeah, that is kind of one of the limiting factors of the ship is all those factors you just mentioned, and particularly the detectability, which is another problem. Is, hey, do you have enough points to get IFHE and detectability? Because you need 14. So, some last thoughts from you guys on the Julio before we go. I know I'm excited to have an Argentine ship, that we're going to have this Pan American line in the game. I think that opens up a lot of cool options for ships here in the future. But what are you guys' like final thoughts about this ship? Do you think it's ready to go in its current state? Do you think it needs a little more tweaking? And when do you think we might see it here in World of Warships?
I love the ship, and I've been putting quite a few games in it. I tested for quite a few hours last night playing this ship extensively and Cossack, and I just been having a blast, even in games where I didn't do well or just got smacked around early. I still had fun, and it's like I want the game to like end so I can play another game. And I think that's a good sign for me that I'm really enjoying the ship. If like, okay, I want to get in the next game. Okay, I want to get I just want to keep playing the ship. And I think that's a good sign.
I like the ship. I think it's a really good ship. I like Vinacera. I have fun playing this ship, surprisingly enough, given the limitations that it has, and how easily it is. Battleships do lewd things to this poor little cruiser. But I feel like right now there definitely needs to be some more testing. Some tweaks need to be made to this ship, in that heel. It maybe in the gun reloads, because 10 seconds is a very long time at tier 7, I think, for a light cruiser. Then again, of course, coming from the Atlanta is the other option where 3.5 seconds reload. But I just feel like maybe the speed is a little bit, maybe that could be tweaked a little bit, or the rudder shift, something about the ship. It feels sluggish to me. You can very quickly find yourself out of position, and the battle can very quickly go off to one flank of the map, and by the time you get there, the battle's over. So I like the ship. I think it's a good boat, but I think there needs to be some tweaks made to it.
Since I haven't actually played the ship, I can't really tell you how I feel about it. However, listening to you guys, I have the urge to go into the game right now and actually play it.
Well, that's a good thing. Aaron, can you give us a little bit of a primer on night battles? Because I know that you played a little bit of that this week in the new operation.
So it's a new operation, and I would recommend everyone try it at least once. It's with tier 8 cruisers. Actually, I think it's tier 8 allied cruisers, including the Soviets. And it's basically kind of like Narai. If you do well, you can get like 2200 to 2700 base XP in that match. So you load up on all the flags you can get, and you can make a ton of XP from that mode, because it doesn't take that long and it's not a very difficult mode. Unfortunately, even though it's called Night Battle, it doesn't really look like nighttime. It's kind of like daytime, and the shells that are supposed to illuminate things don't matter at all. You can literally just ignore all of that. Although there is one interesting thing. If you do the actual mission, so basically you'll be fighting destroyers and cruisers. I think they're all Japanese ones. And you have to, at first, protect some ground targets. That is, you need to sink the ships around it that are shooting at it. And then you simply have to destroy 2 aerodromes. So you need some anti-air, and you need some hydroacoustic search, because those destroyers and cruisers will definitely torpedo you. And it leads to some quite interesting games. It also has some optional 3 Zaos that you don't have to fight, and they will just leave the map. However, if you engage them correctly, they will actually rush you. And in a tier 8 cruisers, that's not always the best option, especially if you're playing with random people. It's a lot of fun.
So I guess one of the things I was interested about from your experience, Arun, is we've seen some of these things that are going into the operations, the aspects of the operations that they're going to pull into regular random battles, like the weather effects and things like that. What is your impression of the night battles from that perspective? Is it something that can be brought into random battles, or is it kind of not really suited for that?
Frankly, I mean, technically, yes, you could bring it in, but it's not really any different from a cyclone because it barely looks any different. It's maybe slightly darker, but you don't need anything to still see completely fine. To me, it was very difficult to actually notice that it was nighttime. We were actually joking because we were playing at like 3 a.m. and strangers made the joke that when he looks outside of the window, it was actually brighter outside or it was as bright outside as it is in game. But the thing is that it's sunrise is basically at 3 a.m. where he is, which means that, it just doesn't look very dark, which I find kind of disappointing. And other than that, that kind of works like a cyclone. You have reduced detectability, and that's kind of it.
Captain Riot, Vanessa, have you guys had any experience with the night battle mode?
I went and played one round in that. Clanmate actually said very first time he went and played it, he liked it, and he got 5 stars right off the bat from it. So I said, well, I mean, if he can do it, I'll go in and I'll see it. And I thought it was kind of fun, but I almost feel like you kind of somebody needs to take a destroyer into the game, or, a faster cruiser, just because there's, those freaking cruisers that start shelling the Marines on the beach that you have to defend. I mean, you got to get out there and you got to get that range and start hitting them. In my case, wasn't able to defend the Marines on the beach. So ultimately at the end of the battle, I only got 4 stars out of it. But I thought it was an interesting battle mode, and the nighttime aspect of it was certainly interesting. I did note that you start at night, and then like the sun comes up, so you end the battle in the morning or in the daytime.
Yep, halfway through, more or less.
Gotcha. Well, I think it's something I'm going to have to try out here this week and see what it's like. You guys have definitely piqued my interest. Vanessa, you said that you played a little bit of Cossack this week. Could you give us your impressions on that?
Absolutely. I've actually really been enjoying this destroyer, and I don't know if the rest of you have tested a lot, but subject to change. It's a work in progress. But 5.1 concealment on a tier 8 destroyer is pretty trolly, and you're replacing one of the kind of secondary anti-aircraft guns that Haida has and making it uniform with the rest. So you have 4 2-gun turrets, and that's a lot of guns. And it's Haida, but at tier 8 with 5.1 concealment. And I've just been having a lot of fun with this ship. And I don't know what the rest of you, what your testing's been like, but it is really good.
I haven't played it, but I have a question. Can you rotate the turrets and the torpedo launchers, or do you still have to rotate the actual ship?
I felt the turrets and the torpedo launcher rotated fine enough. Though I might have it might be one of my British captains that have an expert marksman. So I'll have to look at that a little closer.
Oh, no. I meant in terms of firing angles.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the rear turret definitely has a pretty bad firing angle. I didn't feel that it was that bad. Oftentimes, I would only use that gun when I was in a really good position to kind of do so, or just kind of falling back and do a retreating gunfight. But if you could get into a position where you could farm, and if you were like behind an island, or not necessarily going broadside in smoke, but even if you did, you have hydro, and with the hydro mod, you have hydro up for 3.5 minutes which is crazy.
But isn't the Hydro really short range?
Yeah, but it detects torpedoes. So if you are going to go broadside and smoke, okay, you're going to see the torpedoes and you just start moving.
Captain Rye, is Cossack one of the ones that you got a chance to play, or since you're a destroyer specialist?
I did take that out in the game. I was actually pretty impressed by the ridiculously low concealment. 5.1 kilometers, as Vinacera said, of course, work in progress. But I could not make that destroyer work for me. I didn't like the slow traverse of the guns to make it a gunboat to get up in there and start wailing on people. I didn't like the fact that it only had one torpedo launcher. And I mean, sure, they do a lot of damage, but the reload is kind of long on it. I mean, I'm sure I could go in and, realistically, I need to spec a specific captain for it and play around with it. I just got very frustrated dealing with it. And the fact that I kept getting up tiered to tier 10 without having a captain that had, survivability expert on it, which I think that boat definitely needs to have.
Did you try the torpedoes actually do fire in single fire mode like a British cruiser, Rye? So that I found is one of the things that I needed to do to make both Haida and Cossack work.
I gave that a try. I have limited success when I do the single shot torpedoes. Just for whatever reason, every time I run into a nice big battleship player, they're not big dumb battleship players, and they tend to know how to use that thing called the rudder. So I find that I tend to miss a lot of the single shot torpedoes. It's the same thing on the Perth that I have. I'll fire off single shot, like, okay, I'm gonna get you, and then you turned in, and now all my torps have missed.
Yeah, I've found relative success with it. I remember catching a shim with one randomly launched like torpedo, like, oh, I'm gonna set one here, I'm gonna set one there, and one there. And like, I don't know, like 30, 45 seconds later, just random sink. And thought it was kind of funny. But it's interesting you bring up, being high tiered. I got high up tiered quite extensively through my testing. And I have never seen IJN destroyers squirm so much just being out detected by someone else. Like, it's hilarious. Like, you just kind of creep in and like, there's the shim, and the shim's like, I have 5.4. I'm going to out detect. Oh, wait, why am I detected? Wait, why am I not detecting whoever's detecting me? What is going on here? Like, just, I could only picture in my mind, like, what that player is going through as I'm sitting there trolling them, keeping them spotted. And it's just, it's been a real delight to test this ship, even when up tiered.
Awesome. Well, we do have one more topic for the week, and that's that this week we received the first word of what patch 0.7.7 would look like. The upcoming Sharks versus Eagles event looks like a pretty big improvement over the previous Team Fire versus Team Water event that we had last year in Clash of the Elements. But pretty much all of the patch was thrown into the background over the controversy regarding the changes to the minimap. Starting in the next patch, the mod that shows where your guns are aimed on the minimap will be part of the client. This is of particular aid to ships that often have to fire over islands, as their view is pretty often partly or mostly obscured. So the questions I have for you guys to discuss are, does this change dumb down the game too much? Is it game breaking? And how much does it actually change the game really?
I can say that I know a few people who are very, very, very excited about something like this, but I think it depends on how it works mechanically. You see, right now we get the the icon that says that shells will go over or won't. I don't know how it works if some shells would be able to shoot over the island and some wouldn't. What does the circle look like on the minimap? I don't know. So I think that determines a lot. And I think the people who really want to have something like this are the people that will try to blind fire. And I think this might be a very good asset for them.
I think it's going to change how a lot of people with British light cruisers and destroyer captains play when they drop smoke screens now, because without this mod, and I don't play with any mod, so I don't have this ability to specifically mark on the minimap exactly where I'm aiming. So somebody pops a smoke screen, it adjusts the aim. I don't have them visually anymore. The shots tend to go short or they tend to go long. But with this now, it's like, okay, well, I know exactly where you're sitting, so I'm just going to, keep dropping the shells on that exact spot, and I can make sure and I can adjust my fire and see where that's adjusting. So if you're trying to, squirm around in your smoke screen, moving forward and backward in a straight line, I don't have to worry about readjusting my fire and missing as much. So I think that might be a little bit OP against smoke screens for the ships that have and need to use them.
I guess for me, I'm a little confused as to why the controversy is quite as large as it is in this particular case. I think that I did download this mod, I don't know, a month or two ago, just to play around with it and see how much of a how easy it was to use. And it's actually a lot harder to use than you might think, because at least the version that was a mod, it didn't always reflect where your shells would hit, in terms of if you're going to hit an island, like Arun said. And even when it did show you and you were trying to hit somebody that is in smoke, even then it's pretty difficult because you can't really see where the smoke screen is on the mini map, because it's not represented. So, unless you're talking about you're shooting into a pretty small space, I really don't think that this is one that's going to be game breaking for me. So I guess, do you guys see something here that I'm not seeing that makes this a much bigger deal than I think it is?
Well, I know we've talked about this before with a number of different mods and things that have been added to the game. And while I kind of agree with you, on principle though, I feel like if you're going to add things to the game, you don't necessarily want to detract from the ability to learn the game and the ability to... There's things that if you play the game, a skilled player is going to pick up and learn. And there's some factors there that might be diminished and, lessened. And I think that's where people are kind of being up in arms about. Because if you want people to develop skill, you want people to learn, and you want there to be something that drives people to be better at the game and learn things in the process of becoming better that gets you that skill. And I feel like a lot of these things that they add sometimes diminish that, and that's where people are really upset.
Arun, Captain Rye, do you guys have anything to add there?
I would say I have limited experience playing against that, so I don't really have much of an opinion other than it's going to change the nature of the gameplay for people who have smoke screens. They're going to have to start thinking more critically about squirming around in their smoke screen to avoid, I think, just being annihilated while they try and take shots at people.
That to me sounds like a good thing, because people will stop trying to rely so heavily on smoke screens without not paying any attention to what's going on in the game. I don't really see a problem with it. I kind of agree with you, Kelorn. I don't see the controversy in it.
Well, I guess we're all pretty much in agreement then as well. So we'll see how it pans out, and we'll see if the people that do think it's going to be a bigger deal, if they can give us a better idea of why they believe it is, and convince the devs about it. But Arun, I believe that you and I are going to be guests on the Shooting the Ship Twitch stream with Highfire and Krieger next Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific time.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that with them. Do you have any idea of what they might have in mind?
No clue at all.
Yeah, me either. So we're going in blind here, guys. So definitely tune in on to the Twitch stream for Highfire and Krigor. I think they're actually Highfire is a Facebook streamer, but we'll get you the links and make sure those go out on Facebook and Twitter as well for you guys who would like to tune in to listen to Aaron and I talk with those guys next week. So it should be a good time. Monday night, 8 p.m. July the 9th, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah, July 9th, which is probably like the middle of the night for Arun or something crazy.
No, it's only 6 a.m.
Only. Alrighty, well, Captain Rye, we really appreciate you having to coming on the show this week. Did you have want to give a little shout out to your channels and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great podcast. I think I got to experience some more of the community contributor side of things that I got to get myself into doing more often. But yeah, if you guys are interested in seeing some of my fantastic gameplay in my Fletcher or any of my other destroyers, or any of the other videos that I've got up there for World of Warships, I've got battleships, I've got cruisers. Occasionally, somebody will send me a really good carrier replay that I'll put up there. You can do so by subscribing to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/c/CAPTRYE.
Don't worry, we'll get our link for that in the podcast description.
You can also follow me on Twitch as well, although it's worth noting I don't generally stream very often, and usually when I do, it's only for a couple of battles because things get very salty very quickly and I start losing.
Fair enough. Arun, Vanessa, do you guys have any announcements here at the end of the day?
No.
Alrighty. Well, that's it for this week, folks. As always, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Warships Podcast and Twitter at Warships Podcast for updates between episodes. Don't forget to check out Arun on YouTube and Twitch as well. If you're looking for some podcast swag, we've started up a store on Spreadshirt.com that makes podcast branded shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, mouse pads, and other cool things. The URL for that is shop.spreadshirt.com/Warships Podcast. We, of course, want to thank our amazing Patreon backers. If you're interested in supporting us, please consider becoming a backer yourself. It does help us out and to paying our hosting fees and things like that. Backers do get access to special giveaways, like we mentioned today at the beginning of the podcast. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.